Sometimes you have visualizations that show a breakdown by a long list of items. And what happens if there's not enough space? You get a scroll bar. Now, for the end user, it might feel as if they have to scroll and scroll endlessly to get to the insights that they need. Now, as an alternative to this, you could also consider pagination, which means that you divide the number of items over multiple pages. And you could even let the user pick how many items they want to see per page. Now, this gives the business user more control over how they consume the content in the best way. Now, let me show you how we can set it up. Welcome to How to Power BI. My name is Bas, and if this is the very first time for you visiting this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my videos in which I share everything I know about Power BI. All right, so we want to build a visualization with pagination. Now, just to make sure that you know what pagination is, let's take over here Bing search. Now, you see that if I search for something, then I can scroll all the way to the bottom, and there, well, we have option to go to the next page. So it divides the search results over multiple pages. Now that's exactly what I want to have over here for this bar chart, because also here I have a long list of, now these items are not search results, but over here we are looking at car dealers, and you see I can just endlessly scroll down and down and down and down. We have about 84, I believe, different car dealers in this data set. All right, so let's just dive in straight away. As a very first step, let's give the user the option to choose the number of items that they want to show. So for that, we need a numeric parameter. So we can go here all the way to the top to modeling, and then over here, new parameter, numeric range. And this parameter we're going to call number of items that the user wants to see per page. All right, data type whole number is okay. Minimum, well, at least one we want to see. Maximum, let's say 50. Then the increments are 1, that's fine. And by default, I want to have the default to 10. Add this slicer to the page and click on create. Now this creates, first of all, the slicer that we need where the user can pick how many items they want to see, but at the moment, it's not connected to anything just yet. Now, I'm just gonna put it here on the right-hand side of the visual. Now, numeric range parameter is just a disconnected table in the model. As you can see, when you go here to the modeling view, number of items is that disconnected table. Here at the top, you see the formula, generate series 1 to 50, increments of 1, and the sales table, well, that is the main table that I use for this visual, okay? And there's no relationship between them. Now, let's go back to the reporting view, because now we need to add another numeric range parameter, because we also want to have the option where the user can click on the page number that they want to go to. All right, and for that, we need another one. So, modeling, new parameter, numeric range. And this one we can set up in exactly the same way. So let's call this one number of pages, and then here whole number, minimum, let's put this to 1, maximum, let's also put it to 50, and then increments of 1, default, over here let's just put in 1. Okay, add slicer to the page, click on create. And exactly the same thing happens again. We have a disconnected table, but now this one is called number of pages. Now, the slicer I'm going to put here on the right-hand side, right next to it. All right, so now we have the controls which let the end user pick how many items they want to see per page and to which page they want to go. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is to rank the items. Now over here, that's the car dealers, based on the series that you're visualizing. Here, that is total sales. So we can do this with a measure. So let's add a measure. Now let's call it item rank. And this is going to be equal to, now here we can use the function rank X. Now, the rank X function has two mandatory arguments, table, expression. Now, the table that we want to iterate over is going to be all of the items. So we can use the all function, which removes any filter on here, the car repair shop name column. All right. And then for each item, we're going to calculate the total sales. And on that basis, it then assigns the rank. Okay, and then we can close the rank X function, and that's it. So now I want to test if that works. I'm going to go here to the visualization, and then I'm going to go here to the build panel, and here I'm just going to add it to tooltips. So tooltips, and here we can select item rank. And now when I hover over the first one, it should return item rank 1, then 2, then 3. Okay, so the ranking is working. However, it would probably be nice to also show it in the visualization, maybe here right after the item names. And to be able to do that, we have to make use of a little trick. Now, let me first show you what the problem is. If I now would go here to formatting, and then here we go to data labels. Now, the data labels that we have here are the ones that you are currently looking at. And I need two, because I also want to have another data label that then shows here on the left-hand side with the ranking. So what is the trick? What we can do is we can make use of total labels, but the total labels doesn't show. So how are we going to do that? Well, total labels only shows if you have two series or more. So we just have to make sure that we have two series. How? Without actually changing how it looks like now. Well, what we can do is make use of a dummy measure. So if we go back and we add a new measure, and this is going to be a dummy. So let's call it like that. Dummy equals 0. Then we go back to the build panel, and over here we're going to add it, this time right next to total sales. So add data, sales, dummy. Okay, now the colors change. However, there's not really a new series that pops up over here visibly. However, you do see it in the legend. Now, what we need to do is just play around with the formatting so that it looks like we had it before. So going into format, bars, and then here, total sales I want to have in blue. And then the dummy, well, the dummy I want to have just in white. Okay, now here the legend, we don't want anymore. So I'm going to turn the legend off. And now it looks almost the same as before. The only difference is that the labels now show over here and that we have the option to add total labels. Okay, so I'm going to add total labels. You see the total labels pop up all the way here on the right-hand side. All right, and what about the data labels here? Well, there we're going to use the custom labels because we can customize how those labels look like. So let's turn it on and write a measure that then returns the rank. So I'm going to go and add another measure. This is going to be my item rank label because I want to have it show a little bit differently. I want to show it with a pound symbol and combine that with, well, the previous measure item rank. And this one we can then use as a label. So I'm going to go back here to formatting, data labels. Watch out that you apply it to the correct series, which is in this case, total sales. Then over here on the options, we can decide on the position inside base. Then here for values, this is where it gets interesting because here under custom labels, we can choose the field. And the field is going to be item rank labels. All right, so we have the ranking. We have the labels now also showing correctly in the visualization. Now the crucial part, because this ranking we need to use for a filter measure that checks how many items the user wants to see and on which page we are. Now, let's write a measure that we use as a filter for a bar chart. Okay, so I'm gonna add a new measure. All right, now let's call this one item filter. And this is going to be equal to, now let's make use of variables. First of all, we need to figure out the page that is selected. Okay, so for that, there's actually already a measure that automatically gets generated when you set up the numeric range parameter. So that's this one over here, number of pages value. So let's refer to that one, square bracket open, then you see all of the measures, and I want to have this one here, number of pages value. All right, and then the next one, there we need to figure out how many items the user wants to see, number of items, which is going to be equal to, now also here, we already have the items value measure, which just checks what the user picked in that slicer for the number of items. And then the third component is going to be the item rank. Now here, we already created that measure, so we can also here just refer back to item rank. And then the crucial part, which is the filter table with all of the items that need to show in the visualization on the basis of the number of items that the user wants to see and the page that they clicked on. Now, let's call this one items filtered. All right. And maybe table, just to make sure that this is a table. We can make use of the filter function and we want to filter, and here we can say all selected. And here we want to have all of the repair shops, all of the items, and then the filter expression where we need to check the ranking, so the item rank, and the ones that need to show, the items that need to show, need to have an item rank that's bigger than. Here we can see, okay, which page are we on? So we refer to the page, and then we do for this one -1, okay, so the previous page, times the number of items, okay? So the number of items, there we have also a variable. Now, this is one condition that needs to be true for those items that need to show. But there's a second condition, because there's also an upper boundary. This is kind of the lower boundary. And the item rank also needs to be lower than or equal to, and here we can just refer to the page, times, and then again, number of items, okay? So you have the current page times the number of items. So let's say you're on page number 2, you want to see 10 items, 2 times 10 is 20, all right? That would be over here the upper boundary. The lower boundary would then be 2 minus 1 is 1, times the number of items is 10, and so 10 to 20. And the item rank needs to be bigger than the 10 or equal to and lower than the 20. Okay, so that is basically what it says here. Okay, now then we need to close that filter function. And then the last part, there we still need one variable with the items that should show. Okay, so items show, which is equal to. Now here we want to figure out, okay, what is the item that we're currently checking for? So here we can say selected value, car repair shop, all right? And we want to see if this is in that table with the filtered items that should show. Okay, so we can just refer to that table. Okay, so this is the condition that I want to check for. If it's in that table, then return a 1, otherwise it's 0. So I need to wrap the whole thing inside of an if function. Okay, so if this is true, then return a 1, otherwise return is 0. Okay, and this is the final thing that we can return and use for a filter on the visualization. Okay, so items show. Okay, so let's select the visualization, open here the filters panel, and we have to take the item filter, drag it here to the filter section. Let's drag it to the top. This needs to be equal to 1 because only those items I want to show where that condition was true from the measure. Click on apply, and you see now at the moment we are looking at only items number 41 to 50. I want to see 10 items and I'm on page number 5. So let's go to the first page. Let's type in a 1. All right. And you see we have now items 1 to 10. If I say that I want to have 5 items, now you see it nicely shows me the top 5. If I go to the next page, over here, page 2, 6 to 10. All right, so the main functionality is working. We are dividing the items over multiple pages. Now, the thing is though, it's still kind of ugly. So let's improve how it looks like in the UX. Okay, now what we could do is to make it look a little bit more familiar, meaning what the user is probably used to. And that is that you can choose the number of pages here at the bottom. All right. And then the number of items, we can put it right next to it, or maybe here at the top, all right? So let's maybe first start with that one. So let's take the number of items, and I'm going to put it here in the top right corner. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Now, you see, not ideal. We have to go to formatting, and first of all, we can turn the slide off. We don't necessarily need it. Then responsiveness, we also need to turn off. Advanced options, responsiveness, off, so that when we make it smaller, it doesn't disappear and we get the filter icon. And then here we have still a header, and the header we can also get rid of. And then here on the values, let's decrease the font size a bit, and then let's add a background. Let's make it blue, or maybe a little bit lighter, so more colors, and let's shift this a little bit to the left. Now the overall background we also don't want, so let's go to size and style, background, let's turn it off. Okay, and then we can resize it, and I'm going to put it here in the top right corner. Now the problem is, well, the header is gone, so therefore the user has no clue what that number means. So let's put right next to it a little text box. All right, so text box right next to it. Let's resize it, and let's put it over here. And we want to show, well, number of items. Column. Let's make it maybe dark gray instead of black. And let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's resize it. And let's get rid of the background as well. So background off. And then we can just shift it and align it with that number parameter. All right, so that was the first slicer for the number of items. Now the text box we needed because, well, under formatting options, there's no option to say text to the left instead of having the header above it. So we needed the text box. And then the second slicer, where we have to say, to which page do we want to go? Now let's take that pages slicer and let's move it over here to the bottom. Now I'm going to change this one from a single value to tile. All right, and then the selection, we can say single select, that's important. Okay, and now we want to, well, make it look a little bit different, right? So first of all, let's make it a bit wider. I want to have it here, more or less in the middle. The header we don't need, so that one we can turn off. And then we can also here turn responsiveness off. Okay, and here on the visual, let's also make the text a little bit smaller. So values, I put it to 8. Let's put an underline right below it. And then the borders we can also get rid of. All right. And then the background is already transparent. However, what shows is the overall background. So here on the size and style background, let's turn it off. Okay, good. Now here, I would like to show it at the bottom, but when there's maybe not enough space between that slice and the bars, what we could do is just, well, insert another shape. And of course, later we could replace that with a nice background that fits the report that we create here. Now, if you want to know how to do that, just check out this video over here. Okay, now here though, we're going to go to Insert, Shapes, and here I want to have a rectangle with rounded corners. And let's make it white. So over here, we go to Shape Style, then Fill, and make it white. Okay, now borderline we don't need, turn it off, and now we just have to resize it, and then position it where we want to have it, over here. Make it as wide as the graph, and then we have to push it to the back, which you probably can do best over here in the selection pane. So that shape needs to be in the back. All right. And when you deselect it, it shows to the back of the slicer. All right. Now, here we just need to refine it a little bit, just like this. Okay, now that looks kind of okay, but you see a problem though, right? So here, if we make it wider, we see all of the pages. And if I make it wider, 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 all the way up to pages where we even don't have any items. So that means we need to also filter the pages slicer so that we don't show pages that have no items. Okay, now how to do that? Another measure. Okay, so let's add this measure and let's call this one page filter. And also here we need to make use of variables, or at least makes it a little bit easier. And I want to first know how many items do I have overall. Okay, so this is going to be the total number of items. We can calculate this with a calculate function, and we want to do a distinct count. So distinct count on, and here we can then refer to the car repair shop name. So my column, my field with all of the items. And we need to, well, remove any filter. So I'm going to use the all function, and I want to remove any filter on that item. And let's then close the brackets there for the calculate function, and then we can say return, and at the moment the only thing that we can return is the total number of items. Okay, now here, just to check if it works, I'm going to go here to my visual. Let me just select the first page, and then again we can make use of the tooltip, right? So you select the visualization, go here to the builds panel, tooltips. Now item rank is still there. We can add now also here the filter for the pages. Okay, so then when I hover over it, now you see page filter returns 84. Okay, so that's the total number of car dealers, of items that I have. Now let's then go back to the measure, because I want to, well, compare that number to the number of items that should show. So number of items that should show. So let's call this one show number of items. Now, that we have already in that measure, which is called number of items value. Okay, and on the basis of the total number of items and how many items should show what the user picked, we can calculate how many pages we want to have there at the bottom of the visualization. So we can say over here, var number of pages, and that is going to be equal to, and here we can just divide one by the other. So I want to have the total number of items, and I want to divide that by the show number of items. Okay, one divided by the other. So that means if we have total number of items of 100 and the user wants to see 10 per page, well, 100 divided by 10 gives me 10 pages. Okay, now the problem is though, what if you have, I don't know, like in our case, we have 84 items. It doesn't give us a round number. So therefore, it's probably a good idea if we just put this in a round up function and we round it up. Over here, the number of digits, 0. And then we can close that roundup function. Okay, so in our case, if we have 84 items and the user wants to see 10 items per page, we have 84 divided by 10 is 8.4, rounded up, then we get 9 pages. Okay, now this is almost what we want, because the last thing that we need is then to use that result as a filter. So another variable, and here we have then the page filter, which is equal to, and here we can again use an if function and see, okay, what is the selected value for, and then here the pages, and if it's equal to or lower than the number of pages that should show, so number of pages that we already calculated there, then we want to return a 1, and for all of the other pages we don't want to see them, so therefore 0. Now, the last thing that needs to be returned is then that page filter. Okay, and then we can go to the slicer, let's select it, and here we have to use that new measure as a filter. So I'm going to use the page filter, drag it onto the filter section, and I'm going to say that it needs to be equal to 1. Apply the filter. All right, and now you see it goes from 1 to 17. If I put in the 10, then it should give me 9, just like predicted. Perfect. Now, of course, we can make that slice also a little bit less wide. So over here, let's make it a little bit smaller. Okay, then put it here in the middle, just like this. All right, and that looks much better. Now, of course, if the user would put in a very low number here for the number of items that they want to see, you would get a lot of pages, right? So if I type in here, let's say 3, then we have just 3 bars on every page, and you would have, well, an arrow to the right to see, well, all of the pages that have some information. Now, if you want this to look good, well, make it at least as wide as, well, 2 digits, so that this still looks reasonable. And let's test if everything works as it should work. So I'm going to click here on page 1, shows me 1 to 10, page 2, 11 to 20, perfect. Now, of course, if the user still wants that experience with the scroll bar that they see all of the items, then you just have to put in a very large number for the number of items, right? So if I type in here 25, the number of pages gets less and less, and we have a scroll bar. If I put in here 50, then the list becomes longer and longer, all right? And we just have 2 pages. If I want to see all of them, well, then I would just put in 100, but that doesn't work. Why? Because the numeric range parameter I just kept at 50. All right, so if you still want the user to be able to scroll all the way through, well, with that scroll bar, right, and just have 1 page, well, then we just need to go over here to the data, click here on the number of items, and then here in the formula bar, we have to change the 50 to 100. And with that change, the user would be able to type in 100, meaning we would have just 1 page with all of the items, which is that other alternative where we don't want to make use of pagination. So the end user has now full control. They still can go for a scroll bar, or if they want, they can make use of the pagination. Okay, and that's the whole thing. Now let me know what you think. Put your comments and questions in the comment section below. And if you want to build Power BI reports together with me, there's a Power BI design transformation program coming up in a few weeks, where I teach you a bulletproof process of how to develop and implement Power BI reports in a successful way each single time. So make sure to check it out. Now, if you already want to watch more tricks and tips about Power BI, then check out these videos over here, and I hope to see you in the next video.